If you struggle with staying focused and getting things done, you may be lazy and fundamentally broken as a person, and you should probably address that with a therapist, or your work environment may not be optimized for focus. For years, I've struggled to work from home. This was a big problem because obviously I had to do homework when I was in high school. When I was in university, there were projects that I needed to do at home, and I'd struggle to focus. And the pandemic happened when I was in university, and somehow I had to figure out how to work. Lame. I even got a job during the pandemic and had to work from home, and I always just struggled to focus. I figured, hell, I must be a procrastinator at heart. And I'd never be able to be a person who just sits down and focuses for extended periods of time. Then I got a job in an office, and I had to go in every day. And suddenly, this was crazy, I could focus for 8 hours of the day. I even discovered that fundamentally I was a workaholic. This had literally never happened in my life. I'd always thought I was a lazy deadbeat. Suddenly I was putting in 13 to 15 hour days, which is crazy, man. And I look back on it, it's not that healthy. And in reality, those long days did end up resulting in burnout. At first, I believed I'd just grown up and I was a, boring old adult now. I realized during this period that I was actually capable of great success, something that I'd never expected before in my life. I just had never unlocked my full potential before. And I realized that if I put in that effort that I put into my 9-to-5 job, into my own projects, I was bound to be successful. Unfortunately, due to the aforementioned hectic work hours, as well as a couple of legal documents and agreements that I'd made with my previous employer, I didn't really have time, or was I allowed to work on personal projects while working for this company. So at the end of last year, I happened to get the opportunity to work with Andrew Kirby. Fantastic. So I left the company I was previously working for and started working with Andrew. I unfortunately quickly realized that no, I hadn't developed a functional prefrontal cortex. And returning back to my home working environment, I realized I couldn't focus at all. It wasn't like I didn't try. I would allocate blocks of time for me to sit down and actually work. I would set Pomodoro timers, I'd play focus music, I'd do all these different things. But I just could not seem to get my brain into work mode. Even doing all this, I was functioning at like 20% of what I knew I was capable of. Things didn't work out with Andrew, which was okay. It was a fantastic learning experience, and it was great pleasure working with him. I then decided to start my own business, which I'd had in my mind for months. I, of course, had to set this up at home. And again, we had the focus problem. And this was worse than ever. There were so many things I knew I should have been thinking of doing, but I literally could not even think of what tasks I needed to do in order to get to the place I needed to be. It wasn't that I couldn't work. I struggled to do that when I did think of a task, but I could not even functionally think of what the tasks I needed to do were. I was working with consultants and they would try to help me, and then I'd have occasional sporadic bursts of focus where I'd sit down for a couple hours and just do tons of stuff, like build an entire website or write a bunch of copy or reach out to a bunch of people. Obviously, that was not sustainable. I needed to be doing this on a regular basis. It was not a consistent compounding effort that I needed. I unfortunately had a meeting coming up with some potential clients, so I knew things needed to change. There was a whole list of stuff I needed to do. The answer to this problem came quite unexpectedly. I was having construction work done in my ensuite bathroom in my room, where my computer in my office was set up. And I obviously couldn't focus with drilling going on the wall, so I literally just had to pick my computer up. It wasn't this one. I didn't have a laptop at the time, by the way. It was a desktop. I had to pick it up and carry it to another room in my house. Now, this did something very interesting. It meant I had to transition from my leisure environment to my work environment by literally walking down the stairs. I couldn't get enticed by my bed or be confused about which space I was in. There was an environment for relaxing, sleeping, and taking it easy, and there was an environment for work. This did something literally unbelievable. I don't know what I've said in the title, 10x, 3x, whatever. This legitimately 10x my productivity. Like, suddenly I had the clarity of mind to figure out what I needed to do. I would sit down for bursts of time and actually figure it out. I would actually listen to the calendar. And the only thing I changed was the physical space I sat in. Last year, I happened to read James Clear's Atomic Habits. And this took me back to something that James wrote about called environment design. Now, I won't be such a scumbag that I plagiarize all of Mr. Clear's work, but I will try to synthesize what I can into this brief video. I'll also include a link to the original blog where this comes from in the description below. But here's the summary. Environment plays a bigger role in our life than we think. It has a greater influence over our lives than willpower. You can basically improve your life not by finding the willpower and forcing yourself with brute force to get out of a situation, but by literally just changing your environment so that you're almost forced to do what you need to do. An example in the blog post about environment design was comparing European countries and their percentage of the population that were registered as organ donors. There's a stark difference between two countries in particular, Denmark and Sweden. This is relevant because these countries have very similar cultures. They literally are geographically next to each other, so there is no reason for them to have as big a difference as they did. Denmark sat with only 4.25% of the population registered as organ donors, compared to 85.9% in Sweden. Another two similar countries, also neighbors to each other, Germany and Austria. Germany only had about 12% of the population registered as organ donors. Now this is crazy. Austria, 99.98% in the entire country. That's literally like two people. Two people didn't register. Two people were like, no, not an organ donor. So what caused this massive difference between these countries? It was literally the form that was sent out. The countries with low percentage of organ donors had a form that came out and said, if you would like to be an organ donor, tick this box. Meaning people had to actively opt in to become donors. And the countries with higher percentage had a form which read, if you would not like to be an organ donor, check this box, meaning people had to opt out of being an organ donor. Choosing whether you're happy or not for someone else to have your organs is a deeply personal choice and one that people might struggle with a little bit. But even so, with a difficult decision like that, most people just allow the decision to be made for them. Basically, the easier decision to make is just to leave it as the default. And so people would just let that be the decision made for them. If you get a form which says, would you like to be an organ donor? You start thinking, why would I want to be an organ donor? This is insane. And you might not tick it because it becomes more of a thing. Whereas it's like, you're already essentially an organ donor, you just want to opt out. You're not really going to double question it as much. I mean, these people are given essentially the same choice. If you bought a bag of chips the last time you went to the grocery store, you're going to eat it when you open the cupboard, even if you didn't really necessarily want the chips. But if those chips aren't there, you're not even going to think about eating them. And even if you do feel like chips, you're not likely to get in your car, drive to the grocery store, buy a bag, come home and eat it at home. So therefore, the decision was already made for you the last time you went grocery shopping. I really recommend you read the article because there's a lot more nuggets of value than I've just given you. But essentially what I did by changing my environment was move out of an unfocused, undisciplined environment where I could lie on my bed and watch TikToks for hours to an environment where I felt like I had to work because it felt like more of an office environment. This was not a shared environment between my bed and an office. It was just one thing. The movement between the two spaces also allowed for me to get into gear essentially and get ready to go into work mode as opposed to literally just not having any transition between the two. So how can you set up your environment better? The truth is, a lot of people don't have the opportunity or the privilege to set up their workspace in multiple different rooms. So switching into productivity mode might be difficult. Before I begin with anything, I just want to say that's why I got this little guy. A beautiful little MacBook. It's strong enough that I can video edit, I can move around, I can do whatever I want, I can go anywhere. This is a lifesaver. If you have a laptop, literally just move around. Go to a cafe, go to the park and use your phone as a hotspot. Go to McDonald's. Just change your environment if you can't focus. However, if you can't do that for some reason, you have a desktop computer, you're not allowed to leave the house because you're fucking 12. Take an L, buddy. Your best bet is to create a set of rituals, a system with which you can get yourself into gear to work. Obviously, a computer is going to be used for multiple things. You're going to watch Netflix on it, you're going to watch YouTube, as well as do your work. So, how do you change the environment, essentially, of your computer so that one's working and one isn't? Because it's always easy to get distracted, open a new tab and watch a YouTube video. Right. So whether you're on a PC or a Mac, you can set up multiple profiles. Now, I highly recommend you set up one profile strictly for work, and then another profile for leisure. And you need to be very strict with this. There needs to be no way to have fun on your work profile. All right, I just want to clarify quickly. Fun is a loose term. You can have fun while working. What I mean is you shouldn't be able to take your time and play video games or watch movies or do whatever. Okay, back to the video. Is to just have the resources you need to work or study or do whatever you need to do. Focus blockers, everything. You don't have Steam on there. You block Netflix, you block YouTube unless you really need YouTube. But if you need YouTube, whatever, that's fine. Just be very strict with it. And then when you want to have fun, you switch over to your entertainment profile. But now here's what you got to do. James Clear basically talks about making good habits fluid and putting blockers to prevent you from going into bad habits. So how can you do this on profiles? Well, I would say make your work profile very easy password, the one you'll remember, and you can type in like that. For your play profile, literally go onto a password generator, set it to super difficult, and keep that on your phone or on a piece of paper or something like that. So every time you want to go into your entertainment password, you have to look it up and type it out key by key. So there's a big barrier there, whereas going onto your work profile is much easier. A lot of athletes have rituals, such as tying their shoelaces, doing a cross, stretching or something like that, that gets their brain into going in an automatic mode where they literally aren't even thinking and they just rely on pure, like their subconscious mind, pure instinct. So before you do focused work, listen to a song. Make sure it's the same song every time. Make sure it's a song you won't listen to outside of this focus time, just specifically to get yourself into the mood. And make sure it's the right tempo and mood and everything like that. And then for how long it is, before you start working, close your eyes and listen to it. When you're done, find a song that eases you out of it and go back into relaxation mode, and then repeat. After a couple of weeks of this, you will literally Pavlov your brain into seeking work mode when you hear that song. You will literally think like a switch, boom, and you'll be in work mode, and that's it. You'll just immediately get into it. I mean, the trick is to always do things properly. Either be working or be relaxed. Don't ever be halfway between these two. It's not healthy to be multitask and be in and out of environments. You don't want to be writing an essay and then scrolling through TikTok and then writing an essay. I'm guilty of doing this kind of thing, but it's not ideal. Now, one of the smartest guys I know, a man so clever that he was given the opportunity to graduate from high school at the age of 12, and he was emotionally intelligent enough to go, I'm not ready for that. I don't want to hang out with a bunch of adults. I want to hang out with my friends. And so he waited until he was 16. And this is what he told me about time management. He does not have a second of his day that is not accounted for. And in the time where he's allocated to do actuarial sciences for 3 hours, that's all he does for those 3 hours. When he's doing theoretical physics for another 3 hours, that's all he does for 3 hours. He's not switching between the two. He's not doing that. He stays disciplined to what he set his time for. Now, I know him from the gym. And I said, how do you have so much time to spend in the gym? We just chat shit a lot of the time. And he allocates 3 hours of the day to work out and chat shit. He set the environment up for leisure. It's not there just to be focused on the gym, because he knows he needs to socialize in order to stay sane. So if you want to be very effective, you need environments and time allocations where you're going to work. If I sit down in my office for 12 hours of the day and all I'm doing is work, eventually I'm going to get distracted. I'm going to start watching YouTube videos. I'm going to start scrolling and messing around. I need the time when I'm in there to be focused. And then when I decide it's time to relax, I will move out of the environment and go do something else. Or I will switch from another profile so I can play games or watch movies or whatever the hell. But there needs to be a set allocation. Finally, go check out James Clear's article and check out my other videos. This is a different style. I'm experimenting a lot right now. Let's see what works. Thanks, babes.